Now, sort of a cool day today at Shaco. It's first day of winter solstice. We got crows out here in the studio, and it's pretty chilly. May have a little wind noise too, but you'll just have to overlook those things. Boy, they're stirred up about something, aren't they? Look, I'm going to tell you a story today, and there's a reason I'm telling you, and I'll let you know why later. Now, when I was a student at Ole Miss back in the late 1950s, I met a blonde student at a fraternity party. Now, blondes are special, as everybody knows, along with brunettes and brownettes and strawberry blondes and redheads, but this one was extra special. I mean, I could get within 30 feet of that girl, and my neck would swell all up. I'd want to start snorting and bellowing and look for about an acre of dirt to paw up. Well, after the party, the next week, I phoned her a couple of times to ask her for a date, but she was always busy. Well, I called her the next week, and she was busy. And then for weeks, she was busy. Well, I found out that she was dating a football player at Ole Miss. Now, at Ole Miss in those days, as my frat brothers advised me, one did not move in on a football player's girl without risking serious danger to one's bodily safety. And this football player was large. Well, but as most of you boys know, testosterone can often trump good judgment, and I persisted. Well, her calendar each week continued to be filled, so one day I just decided to force the issue and see if she was really busy or just avoiding me. So I called and asked her for a date, and of course, she was busy. So I said, well, today is the 8th of November, 1958. What's your first open date between now and, say, December the 14th, 1963? Well, she said, well, I don't think we have to wait that long. I'm free a week from this Sunday night. I said, well, why don't we go to a movie that Sunday night? She said, fine, but I normally go to Canterbury Club in church on Sunday night. And I said, well, I had no idea what Canterbury Club was. I knew what church was, but she was an Episcopalian, and I, as being an old Baptist, had never been to an Episcopal church, and I did not know what Canterbury Club was. And I said, well, why don't I just come by and pick you up after church, and we'll go to the movies? She said, why don't you just come and go with me? Well, now, I had too much time invested now to back out of that, so I said, fine. I picked her up, and we went to Canterbury Club, which is a meeting of the young folks before church where all the little doily things and the punch is drunk and chatting goes on. Then we go to church. Well, she sang in the choir. And as most of you who have been in an Episcopal church knows, the Episcopal church processes down on each service. The rector goes and the choir follows, and I kind of hung around the back because I did not know what to do, what the procedure was. She was in the choir, and so they were processing down, and so I just backed up behind everybody and walked in behind the whole procession. I had a plan. I was looking for an empty pew with an empty pew behind it because I knew they dealt out of something called a prayer book, and I had never seen a prayer book before. So I was going to try to cover up my ignorance. And I had spotted an empty pew down close to the front and a pew behind it that was empty. That's where I was headed. So I processed in behind the regular procession, waiting to get into that front pew. Now, there is a devilish device in the Episcopal Church called a kneeling rail. It's a device that kind of shoves up under one pew and you back it out so that you can kneel down on it. And then when you get through, you push it back up in the front. Now, thinking folks push the kneeling rail back up under the pew in front of them when the service is over. But whoever had sat in this before was not a thinking, caring person. Well, I was an old Baptist, used to just swinging into a pew and sitting down. The choir was already set. The service was ready to begin and started. I swung into the pew, tripped over the kneeling rail, and pitched headlong out into the pew in front of me, knocking the pew over. I tried to pick it up, couldn't. It was too heavy. Several of the men, fortunately, came to my rescue, and we put the pew up in place. The service stopped. This blonde I was trying to impress had a very good view of everything from the choir loft. But, strangely enough, I guess for reasons unknown to none but her, decided to take me on as a project. Well, long story short, she is now the grandmother of my grandchildren, and she has put up with me for 60 years at the time of this telling. Now, the reason I told you this story is to illustrate that everybody has stories, and I think that folks would like to hear yours. So I've decided that this channel will become a fun place to visit because of the stories contributed by you all and found here. Now, I'd love to hear about your successes, failures, embarrassing situations, victories, accomplishments, triumphs, opinions, or any personal occurrence of interest. Email yours to me at shocotales@gmail.com. Here's the shocotales@gmail.com. And let me know whether to use your name or not when I tell it. And as an old friend of mine once advised me, don't let the pristine truth cripple a good story. So let your conscience be your guide. Now, a final word about my story told here. I told you about the way that blonde affected me to begin with. And she still affects me the same way. But after 60 years, I figure maybe a half acre of dirt would suffice. Wouldn't you? Merry Christmas, you all. Send me your stories. I'd love to hear from you. I'm Jim Ritchie. I'll see you again next week.